What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Wood Talk Sports Podcast. Today, we've got a lot for you. We've got 4 different sports, a lot of playoffs going on. We've got NHL, NBA, NFL, and Champions League right now going on. You know, with the NFL, there was the draft, playoffs in NHL and the NBA, and then the Champions League is in the final. And we will be going through all 4 of these, having some guests on to talk about said sports. And, without further ado, we're going to just hop right into our first subject of the day, which is NHL. I'm here with my good friend, Adam Paulson.
What's up, guys? As Bryce said, I'm Adam, and I've been playing hockey my whole life, so you could say I know a thing or two.
Yeah, he's a player. He plays here at the University of Idaho. Shout out the Vandals. And, we've had a good playoff so far, I would say so, in the NHL. I know the team that I've been rooting for is still in right now as the Dallas Stars. Growing up there for 9 years, I really liked the Dallas Stars. And, they had a tough one in the first round against the Golden Knights, but they got a tough one in this round against the Avalanche. Right now you see Colorado up 1-0, and then Vancouver up 1-0 against Edmonton in the West. Let's just start off with that Dallas matchup. Adam, what do you like and what do you don't like with these two teams matching up against each other? Huh?
Colorado is just so good. They've done it before. Just 2 years ago they won the Cup, so they know exactly how to handle it. They know how to win playoff series. Dallas has also been there. Just a few years ago, they were in the finals against Tampa. Couldn't get it done, but they aren't bad either. Heiskanen has gotten a lot better. Robertson, he's good. He's turning it on. Just their whole team is really built for the playoffs. So that is going to be a really good series. They gave one up to Colorado. Went up 3-0 in the first and then lost 4-3. That's a tough loss, but 1-0 in a series isn't a bad spot to be in. So I think they've got in them. They can definitely win this one.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. As I said, I might have a little bias just because I like Dallas a lot more than I like Colorado. But you look at both these teams; they've had playoff success in recent history. As you said, Colorado in 2022 they won the Cup. In 2020, Dallas made the final. They just made the Western Conference final last year when they lost to Vegas in 6. Both teams really do match up together. Nathan MacKinnon's is arguably one of the top 3 best players in the entire league. And so that's something that I really like. I really point towards is seeing a guy like him, and then obviously Cale Makar, who is also a dog, I would have to say, on the ice rink. But when it comes to predictions for this one, what would you really say? I'm kind of leaning towards, honestly, I could see a 6 or 7 game series. I still haven't decided who I think would win, but what do you think?
Yeah, this series definitely goes to 6 or 7 games. The biggest question for most people, I think, is Colorado's goaltending. They have a relatively inexperienced goalie. They lost last year to the Kraken in the first round, and I think he was their goalie at the time. So that's why a lot of people aren't sold on Colorado, but man, is the rest of their team good. Dallas, on the other hand, they've got a surefire number 1 guy in net for him. Ottinger's an incredibly talented goalie, and the rest of their team is really good too. So that's a tough one, but the team that wins the first game of the series wins the series overall most of the time. So I'd take Colorado in 7.
You know what? That's very reasonable. That is very reasonable to take Colorado there. And so we're going to move on to the second Western Conference one, where we've got Vancouver and Edmonton. Vancouver actually in game 1, I believe it was 4 unanswered. Yeah. Right? They were down 4-1 and ended up winning 5-4 against the Oilers in game 1. And I'm not too familiar with Vancouver as a team, but I'm very familiar with Edmonton. Obviously, they've got Connor McDavid, the best player. And then they've also got like a Leon Draisaitl, or they've got a good squad. But kind of just educate me on Vancouver a little bit. Educate some of the viewers on Vancouver a little bit.
I'm glad you asked. I've been a Vancouver fan since their 2011 playoff run. So Vancouver's got some dudes. They've been kind of knocking on the door of the playoffs the last few years, and finally made it. And I think are poised to do some damage here. They have Quinn Hughes, the top scoring defenseman in the league this year. Let's see, Elias Pettersson. He's a Swede. He's a dog. I think he was close to 100 points this season. I think he hit 101 last year. JT Miller. I think he's also around 100 points, and Brock Better, a 30 goal scorer. I'm pretty sure. So they've got some real good players. It just comes down to playoff experience, I think, for some of them. A lot of these guys haven't played a playoff game since the bubble in 2020 when they knocked off St. Louis and then took Vegas to 7 games in the second round. But unfortunately, Vancouver lost their starting goalie, who was a Vezina finalist in the first round. I didn't watch the game, but Nashville might have been doing some shady stuff. Not too sure about that, but Arturs, Silovs came in. He did really well. Shut out Nashville in Game 6 to take a 1-0 win, take the series, and then maybe not his best performance in Game 1 against Edmonton, but got the win. You can't complain about that.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I think just off of the very little I know about Vancouver, just watching them play, especially I watched Game 1. The fact they're able to come back even from that type of score was very impressive. For this matchup, I have Vancouver probably winning in like 6. I don't know about you, but
yeah, Vancouver matches up really well with Edmonton overall. Edmonton has a really, really high top end with McDavid and Draisaitl, but they have very little depth to their team.
Yeah,
Vancouver has a lot of depth. They have one of the best scoring third lines in the league. It's pretty impressive. One of those guys, Connor Garland, scored the game winner last night. So yeah, I think Vancouver on paper matches up better. It's just how they play.
Yeah, I would say that, and that's something very, very important, especially come playoff time, is successful second and third lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our 2 Western Conference matchups. Both of us kind of have Colorado, Vancouver kind of advancing. Sounds like obviously you got a Vancouver guy and a Dallas guy here, so a little bit of bias between those as well. But to move on to the Eastern Conference, both of these games have seen 2 games. And the first one we'll talk about is tied at 1-1 with the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins. Florida actually just won 6-1. I believe it was yesterday. Yeah. They absolutely had a dominating performance. Obviously, they have the, I believe, second best record in the Eastern Conference, right behind the Rangers, who won the President's Cup. Basically, what I see from this matchup is Florida was a very Cinderella-ish team last year. I mean, they weren't they under 500 at one point, or were they 500?
Yeah,
I think so.
They barely squeaked into the playoffs. It was a combination of multiple teams losing their last game, and they picked up a win, and somehow they got in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just all of a sudden, they made some improvements. I'm pretty sure, and all of a sudden, boom, they have a great record. They're number 1 in they got first place in their division, and they kind of took care of business with Tampa Bay pretty easily. And then they're playing a team that in Boston who actually just beat Toronto for the 4th time in like 11 years, I think it is, which is hilarious to think about.
Yeah.
So what I see in this matchup is, I like the way Florida plays. I like when they get hot, they're hot. They can get hot. And as much as Boston's a good team, the way they looked in the first round kind of scared me. Toronto's a very good team who they faced in the first round, but like Toronto isn't really a team with that much playoff success. So that was something that kind of worried me, as they went to 7 with a team like that, especially almost blowing a 3-1 lead in the series, which they did to Florida last year, funny enough. So for me personally, I don't have much to say about this matchup other than I think Florida will advance. I think it's going to be a good one. I do think Florida will advance to the Eastern Conference Final, though. If you want to give your own insights, you can, man.
Yeah, I'm a Boston hater. They beat the Canucks in 2011 to win the cup, so I pray on their downfall every single time they step on the ice. But yeah, I really hope Florida wins this series, and I think they will. You know,
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't not really much to say about that
Yeah.
except both of us think Florida's going to win. I think both of us also. I also hate Boston, so we got two Boston haters. So we're both hoping Florida wins that one. I think Florida wins it. So, and then heading into our final matchup in the second round, we've got the Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Almost said Panthers. That is football, ladies and gents. It's up 2-0 right now for the Rangers, and Game 3 is going on as we record. 1-1 heading into the third period. I mean, this Rangers team just looks fantastic. They look so good, and I mean, what was it? He had what, Shesterkin? That's how you say it, or whatever.
yeah,
54 saves, wasn't it?
yeah,
In Game 2 or something.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
I was watching that one, and yeah, the shot counter was crazy high for Carolina. And New York had 35, 36, and ended up winning. Yeah, Shesterkin is crazy. New York is the definition of a wagon this season.
Oh yeah,
They won the President's Trophy, so we'll see if they can break the curse of the President's Trophy.
Yeah,
because I think the last team to win the Cup and the President's Trophy was the 2013 Blackhawks.
it's been a bit. It has been a bit. Yeah,
it is kind of crazy how that works,
Hmm.
but I feel like it's similar in all sports. But yeah, New York is probably going to win this series. Carolina's good, but man, New York is crazy good.
Yeah. I mean, I like the way that Carolina plays. I like some of their guys. One of my other teams that I really like watching, the Pittsburgh Penguins. They just traded away Jake Gensel. Is it? Yeah, Jake Gensel. Traded him to Carolina, which kind of made me sad, but good to see that he's in the playoff, but his playoff run's not going to last very much longer because he's going against the Rangers. But yeah, I'm on the same boat. Rangers are going to win this one. They're just an absolute juggernaut of a team almost. And we're going to have some good matchups in the conference finals. And I'm excited to see how the rest of the playoffs goes. But yeah, that's our final matchup, and that's actually going to end up wrapping it up for the NHL portion of our a podcast, giving you the playoff outlook and predictions on this second round. Adam, appreciate you for coming in and talking NHL playoff with me, man. And just it's a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Bryce. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, fellas, we are going to end up moving on to our next section of the podcast. Today, we are moving to the NBA playoffs. Our next guest will be coming up soon. His name is Cameron Young. He is one of my good old friends that I've known forever. And we're here to talk NBA playoffs. They're also in the second round. We've got guys, big names, Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic in the West. It's wild. So Cam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Bryce. I mean, can't do a better introduction than what you did for me. I mean, you said it best. We've known each other forever. I mean, I'm super happy to be back. Obviously, we've done the podcast together before. But yeah, no, man, I'm happy to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's been a bit since we popped on a call, man. It's been a bit since we've done a podcast together. Since like maybe college football 2022?
Yep. 2022 college football. But sorry, go ahead.
It's been a bit, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I'm excited though. I'm excited to talk some NBA playoffs with you. Obviously, our Mavs are going to be starting their game here in about half an hour against the Thunder, Game 2 in Oklahoma City, hoping for them to bounce back and maybe steal a game in the OKC.
Oh yeah, it would be nice to steal that home court advantage away from OKC. But without further ado, we'll just move into. How about we go Western Conference first then? If we're speaking about the Dallas Mavericks,
why don't we start there?
Let's start with the OKC Dallas matchup. I mean, we saw Game 1. It was not the prettiest from a Dallas perspective, but not the prettiest overall. I would say the officiating was a little bit questionable. People look at it and they would not be the biggest fans of this officiating. It was something that I really kind of had an eyebrow raised to. People try to compare the fact that the Thunder only shot 3 more free throws, but when you look at the personal fouls called and the total fouls called per team, there was quite literally a massive advantage towards Oklahoma City. And it just seemed like some of the tic-tacky fouls that wouldn't get called usually were getting called against Dallas. Cam, what were you seeing out there on game 1?
Yeah, no, the game, I mean, watching the officiating, I had to turn the game off, halfway through the third quarter. I just couldn't do it anymore. Just, it was really poor all around. As a Mavs fan, obviously, I'll always believe that the officiating is sided away from the Mavs, right? But, I mean, in this game, it really felt like that was the case. And so it wasn't very fun to watch. And hopefully the officiating, moving forward gets a little bit better. Like you said, those personal versus the personal fouls versus team fouls, it was just very lopsided. And Shai, that's what he does best, is draws fouls and gets to the line. And his point per game average is very skewed because of that. Obviously, though, he was second in MVP voting. I think that it's really going to give Luka an edge tonight, especially with that knee that he's dealing with. I think that him being third in MVP voting really is going to tick him off, and he's going to go off tonight.
I'm definitely hoping for it. When I look at that matchup, I really do think it's a very even matchup. Obviously 2 of the best players in the entire league on both teams. Kyrie Irving for Dallas, arguably the best second option in the entire NBA. I would argue he is. But you look at the way they're matched up, they've got good center play for both teams. OKC's got Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. And then you've also got, for Dallas, you've got Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, the rookie from Duke. So that's just a big thing for me. Is that these 2 teams are very, very well evenly matched. And it's going to come down to Dallas, who's a very high-powered offense, and Oklahoma City, who has a lot of good defenders. I mean, you look at Shea, he's a very good defender at the point position. Josh Giddey's a very good defender at the 2. You look at Will, J-Dub, he's a very good defender. Lou Dort, they don't call him the torture chamber for nothing, because he absolutely tortures people when he defends them. And then obviously you've got a great shot blocker in Chet Holmgren on OKC, and that's something that when you look at the way that they're so depth, they have so much depth and they're so well built. And the fact that they're that young is something that's very, very impressive to me. Is that Oklahoma City? The only thing holding this team back is the fact that they don't have the playoff experience. That none of these players have really even played in the playoffs. I mean, I think the most playoff experienced guy on this team is probably Lou Dort, who played in the bubble. So, and then Dallas obviously has a little bit more with guys like Luka. You have Kyrie. Kyrie's like one of the only players. If the Nuggets are to be eliminated, he's one of the only. I think he was one of the only players who has played in the finals from the Western Conference, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I look at this matchup. I really hope for a good series. I still am on the Mavs and 6 train. Cam, what's your thoughts about this, man?
One of the things that the Mavs have really struggled with is getting Kyrie activated early. Kyrie has really struggled in the first half in these playoffs, and what really needs to happen is they need to get him working in the first half, and ultimately the entire team working in the first half. Mavs have been a very heavy second half team, and so obviously, when you're a second half team, it means that you're probably playing from behind, and playing from behind is already hard as is, and so, but yeah, man, I mean, I'm on the same train with you, Mavs in 6, obviously. But the Thunder have built such a good team over the last years. I mean, gosh, they went from Russ, Harden, and KD to their own new versions of that in Shai and Chet.
Yeah, it's impressive. It's really impressive.
I mean, don't even talk about the amount of draft picks that they've got.
Oh my goodness, 18 draft picks through like 2030 is wild, man.
Insane.
It's so crazy, but they've got a very bright future ahead. I just don't think this year is their year, despite being the number 1 seed in the West. So you heard it from both of us. Mavs in 6 is both of our predictions for that first matchup. Now to move it on, we will go to the second Western Conference matchup, which will be the Timberwolves, who are currently up 2-0 against the Denver Nuggets. They won both games in Denver. Very impressive. And man, Cam, can you just talk about the absolute stud known as Anthony Edwards and how he has just been dominating in this postseason? Like, it's honestly crazy to think about.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bryce. I don't know when they play next, probably tomorrow. You're going to hear AE MVP chants in Minnesota. Man, has he been on a tear. Almost as great as a tear as Jalen Brunson, both in their own respect. I mean, those are your two big names. I mean, obviously Anthony Edwards torching the former champions. I don't know what more you can ask from the guy. I mean, they've got such a great roster around him. The DPOY, Rudy Gobert, and Anthony Edwards does it all, man. Seriously.
It's very impressive what he can do, and I mean, when you look at just the way that team is built, as you said, a defensive powerhouse, man. I mean, you go out in game 2, your defensive player of the year, and Rudy Gobert, isn't even playing. He's there. He's there for his wife for the birth of his son, and he's not even playing in game 2. And they hold the Nuggets, the defending world champs, with the MVP Nikola Jokic, and they hold him to 80 points. I mean, that makes you think, how many points would the Nuggets have scored if Gobert was there? It's like it feels like they probably would have scored 65, which is unbelievable to think of. I mean, you look at Jamal Murray, who's a very, very good player for the Denver Nuggets. He was put into a chamber. He was put into a corner, and the Timberwolves told him, you are not moving from this corner. You are not doing anything. We are shutting you down, and that's exactly what they did. He went 3 for 18, and they just dominated game 2. They've got guys like Jaden McDaniels. They've got guys like Nickel Alexander-Walker, and then obviously Rudy Gobert, as I said. It's just they've got players off the bench too that just come into the game and you just really perform defensively, especially. The team that they've got is really special, and I really do like them winning this series, which would be really cool because that means that every star player for every team would be looking to get their first ring, and that is something that is wild. Is that we could see some star player win their first ring if Jokic gets eliminated. It's crazy. And that's something I hope to see. And for my prediction, I've got, honestly, the Wolves in 5. I think the Nuggets pull out one game. But I think the Timberwolves get it done. Sorry, did I say Nuggets in 5? I think I meant Wolves in 5.
I think you said Timberwolves in 5.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I could see the Wolves winning it in 5 or 6. I can tell you what, Minnesota is going to be electric for the next 2 home games. I don't see them dropping a game at home. I seriously I could see them sweeping the Nuggets.
Very, very possible, honestly. It's very, very possible. But I mean, there you go. There's our 2 predictions for the West, So yeah. We're anticipating Dallas and Minnesota in the Western Conference Final. Cam, what do you really see out of those 2 teams? Honestly, I think it's a very, very similar matchup to what Dallas is going through right now, with a very defensively good team and a very offensively good team. So, what do you see through the Dallas and Minnesota matchup if that is to happen?
I don't think that Dallas is having to play an Anthony Edwards just yet. I think that they're playing a younger version of Rudy Gobert as well. It's almost like a younger version of the Wolves, if you want to say that with how young the Wolves are. But I mean, if Dallas were to go into that, the key takeaways for Dallas would be lock down Anthony Edwards and move around Rudy Gobert. And that's so hard to do. And then for the Timberwolves, I mean, it's really just about stopping Luka and Kyrie, and figuring out how to stop those 2, which a lot of teams late in the season really couldn't do that.
Yeah, they've been the hottest duo in the NBA. It's been so impressive what they've been able to do, and it's something that honestly, I don't know if teams can even do that. I mean, if one of them's even off, the other one's lights out. So I'm excited to see if that's the next matchup. I don't think we're going to give any predictions on it because obviously it hasn't happened yet. And we can't really speak on the future if the future isn't here. So that's our Western Conference of the NBA playoffs. And we'll move into the Eastern Conference now. We'll start with our guy Jalen Brunson in New York, former Maverick. Cam and I both really big fans of him. He has been absolutely fantastic for the Knicks this playoffs. I mean, he would have dropped his fifth straight 40-point game if he did not get hurt in the first half. He had 29 in game two to go up 2-0 against Indiana. And I mean, the way that this team is playing, if people like to say it's the power of friendship that's making them win games, because they've got the three Nova boys. They've got Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. All went to Villanova. All won national championships at Villanova, for a matter of fact. And they just all been great this series. They were great the first series, and I mean, you got an absolute glue guy in Josh Hart. I mean, what an absolute trooper! In 8 games, he has played all 48 minutes in 4 of them. It's phenomenal what he's able to do. It's crazy. I mean, these Nova boys are doing stuff that I've never seen before.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, Brunson, former Mav, just tearing it up in the playoffs. 24 of his 29 points coming in the second half after that injury, just lighting it up. You said that he would have dropped another 40 bomb. He was. I'm at a loss of words talking about him, Bryce. He's just so gosh darn good. And, up 2-0 now on the Pacers. I don't know what the answer is for the Pacers. I'll be dead serious.
I don't think there is an answer. I mean, Halliburton hasn't been playing great, and that's a guy that you need to be playing great if you're Indiana, because not only does he score, but he creates opportunities for his teammates and guys like Pascal Siakam, guys like Miles Turner. If he's not able to create opportunities for his teammates, he's not playing to his full potential, and that's something that it hasn't happened in the first 2 games, and that's something that worries Indiana. Would worry Indiana, and that's going to worry them going back to Indiana. Yeah, they did. They just beat a Milwaukee Buck team, but they didn't have their 2 best players. They had Lillard for 2 games, and Giannis didn't even play in the series. So, you look at Indiana's situation. I think you say the season's over already at this point. Honestly, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, gosh.
I think Indiana wins it pretty quick.
Yeah, and really what the big thing is for Indiana is they're really lacking on that really prolific scorer. Pascal Siakam, don't get me wrong, great player, absolute bucket, but you need another guy to go along with Halliburton, who's a big name in the league, who's really going to get in there and drop 30 every single night for you, or roughly around there, right? And so, should Indiana lose this series and, be out of the playoffs, I bet you they immediately go to the drawing board and say, we need a guy who can get a bucket.
They do. They need to go get somebody who's going to be not a Halliburton type player who passes the ball a ton, but a guy who can work with Halliburton to drop 30 a night. Especially in the modern NBA when people are doing this like it's nothing. I mean, you have multiple players averaging over 30 points a game in the regular season, which is 82 games. So, you just need a player like that to be able to score, high 20s, low 30s almost every night in the playoffs for you to be successful. And we saw that in teams that got eliminated in the first round, like Milwaukee and Los Angeles and New Orleans. Those teams, they just didn't have players going out there dropping near 30 a night. So, my prediction, honestly, New York 4 or 5. I think they'll win this one very easily. Cam, what's yours?
I'm right there with you. New York in 4 or 5. If I had to really guess, though, I'm going to say New York in 5.
Okay. Now we'll move on to our final matchup of the second round. We've got the number 1 seed, the Boston Celtics, facing the number 4 seed, Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like this matchup really has just not been talked about. I feel like it doesn't even exist at this point. Every Cavs matchup in the playoffs just seems like it doesn't exist. That first round, a lot of people didn't even realize the Cavs in Magic went to 7, and they did, and the Cavs went out and won. Not a single road win in that series, may I add. I mean, just to get to the bottom line of it, I don't think there's really much to talk about other than Boston's starting lineup is 5 All-Stars. There's nobody's beating this Boston team out of the East unless they are beating themselves. The team that has the best chance is New York, in my opinion, just the way they've been playing. But I honestly think this is going to be a sweep. against Cleveland. I really like Donovan Mitchell. I like Evan Mobley. His offensive consistency is terrible, though. And Darius Garland needs to step it up. He hasn't been playing well. I just don't think this Cleveland team is built to make it past the second round. I mean, this Boston team is one of the best teams we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anybody is beating Boston, like you said, unless Boston beats himself. And for the Cavs, you mentioned in that first series against the Magic, not a single away game was won. And playing against the Celtics, not only are you going to have to win one away game, in my opinion, but I think that you're going to have to win two. And I don't think that the Cavs have the star power and the scoring to do that against this super high-powered, flying offense. I mean, you've got guys like Peyton Pritchard on the Celtics going off every other night. I mean, I just can't explain it, Bryce. These guys are insanely good, and like you said, I think the best team that has a chance against the Celtics are the Knicks. But even then, it's really questioning how good are the Knicks versus how good are the Celtics.
It is. It's really the bigger question is, can Boston make sure to stay consistent in the playoffs? And they've been looking fantastic, especially with a guy like Derek White, who honestly I think is outplaying Jason Tatum so far, and really being the highlight of the Boston team, which is something that nobody would really expect. But he is a fantastic player for him. Derek White is an absolute stud for Boston. So we've got obviously a Boston and New York matchup in the Eastern Conference Final, in our opinion. I mean, we've talked about it. The closest team that has a chance to beating this team is going to be New York. And I just think Boston's depth is something that's going to concern New York because New York seems to be running a lot of New York seems to run 7 and 8 man rotations, but that's just what Tom Thibodeau does, That's just that's how he is. He runs his starters 40-plus minutes a game in the playoffs, as we said about Josh Hart. Josh Hart's averaging like 46 minutes a game. And so you look at these two teams matched up, and you say, how is that gonna affect the big man play? With Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson against Kristaps Porzingis, who's a great player. It really worries you. It really worries. It's very worrisome. And that's something that I think. Obviously, I'm not going to give a prediction on what I think is going to happen. Would be a big problem to New York.
Yeah, 100%, Bryce. And I mean, if the conference semifinals played out the way that it was, or the way that we think, being Celtics versus Knicks and Wolves versus Mavs, who do you think is the favorite to win the finals out of those four?
Out of those four teams, I think it's got to be Boston, man. I mean, they've been favored all year pretty much to be the 2024 NBA champs. This team, only team to win 60 games this season. And I mean, they just look great all around. I mean, if I were to put it into a ranking from 1 to 4, I think honestly, the rankings would probably go Boston, Minnesota, Dallas, New York. I think that's what it would be. And I think that's just because I think Minnesota and Boston are very well built, and they have depth. They have a lot of good depth. Meanwhile, New York and Dallas may have a little bit more questionable of depth. They maybe not bad depth. I mean, Dallas, I think, has a pretty good bench unit, but very inconsistent bench unit at times. So I'd have to say it would have to be Boston, Minnesota, Dallas, and New York. What's your thoughts?
Since you took the analytical route, I'll go ahead and I'll take the biased route, and I'll say that I really do think that the team that can win the finals is the Dallas Mavs. Like you said before, Bryce, hottest team to end the year. I mean, great series with the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers had Kawhi, and they couldn't win with him. So the big three of the Clippers with Paul George, James Harden, Kawhi, Russell Westbrook. I mean, the Clippers have a great team, and the Mavs went in there, and they slapped them around for about 6 games. And so I really do think that the Mavs will bounce back. The game should be starting here any minute now. I do think that they'll bounce back, get a dub tonight, and take all the momentum moving forward.
I'm hoping. I'm sure as hell hoping. But that wraps up our NBA playoff portion. And we will move on to our third portion of the video. Cam, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft. I know you were a little worried because you probably haven't been keeping up as much coverage as I have. Obviously, I have made 11 mock drafts that have been published on the internet, on YouTube, and just want to toot my own horn here, but to talk about my mock drafts, I want to announce that I had 4 mock drafts that had 28 of the 32 first-round picks correct. So you're not listening to people that don't know what they're talking about when it comes to the NFL and the NFL draft. So we'll hop right into that with... Let's just talk about the biggest winner.
I just want to ask real quick, Bryce. Do any of those 4 have Ricky Pearsall to the Niners?
Nope. No, sir.
Just wanted to make sure.
That I did not see that coming. I saw him going to the Steelers in the second round, but didn't happen. We'll get started. The absolute winners, I think, of the first round, especially, you got to say Chicago. I mean, you get your franchise QB in Caleb Williams, and then you somehow manage to get Roma Dunze to fall to your lap at 9. And it's just, you don't see a team try to trade up for him. It's just fantastic, man. I mean, that offense is going to be something deadly. This is the best situation a rookie quarterback's probably ever been put into since Brock Purdy got put into that Niners offense 2 seasons ago. It's just fantastic. I mean, you look at a team; they've got three wide receivers who have 1,000-yard receiving yard seasons ahead of them. It's fantastic how this team has been built in such a little time. And as much as I hate that we didn't get to see Justin Fields with a team like this, we're going to see Caleb Williams, who is a better overall quarterback in this situation. So I just think Chicago easily won round 1. I think they did a great job in the later rounds with their not very many picks. But and then another team I really want to point out as a winner is Pittsburgh. You sit back at 20 and you get the second best. You get one of the best, probably the second best offensive lineman prospects in Troy Fautanu, who can play tackle, who can play guard, who can play center. In a team that's very, very needy for a offensive lineman, goes and gets one of the best prospects in the first round at pick number 20 is fantastic. And another team I want to point out as well is the Philadelphia Eagles and also the Detroit Lions, who are able to get absolutely high-valued studs at corner at pick 22 with Quinyon Mitchell going to Philly, and then Terrion Arnold going pick 24 to Detroit. I had both those guys going in the top 15. But then obviously we had the huge, crazy changeup of the most offensive players picked before a defensive player in NFL history with 14, and then the first defensive player being Laiatu Latu to Indianapolis at 15. But them being able to fall into the 20s was absolutely crazy to me. And those 2 teams got an absolute steal with Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold.
Yeah, Bryce. I mean, I talked about it before, but the value of the defensive player in this draft was just absolutely insane with the record-breaking 14 offensive players before a defensive player. And I felt even, my top defensive player in this draft was Byron Murphy, not even being the first one off the board, going to Seattle. Great pickup for those guys. And, Seattle, very good at developing those defensive guys.
Yeah, that's saying something because you are not that big of a fan of Seattle.
Not a big fan of Seattle.
Yeah, being an Iron guy.
Because they've been bad. They've been bad recently. So,
yeah,
I can talk about them being bad, right? I can talk about them a little bit more and not feel so bad about it because Russell Wilson isn't there torturing us, and they're just not as the Legion of Boom is no longer there. But yeah, no, I mean 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks too, also a record.
Oh yeah, I mean
3:
look at those
Caleb, Jaden, Drake. Gosh,
I mean 2 of them very questionable. I mean, you want to expand on that? What the hell were the Falcons thinking, man? Picking Penix 8th overall after just signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal with over $100 million guaranteed. Cam, can you please just talk about that a little bit? Tell me your thoughts about what the hell the Falcons were doing.
I mean, there's so many things that the Falcons could have done right there. I'm sure that the Vikings wouldn't have minded trading up there to make sure that they got their guy in J.J. McCarthy. I'm sure that they could have drafted a defensive guy with the amount of value that was there. Hell, Roma Dunze, who got drafted right after him. So just an awful – I mean, and well, let me say this before I comment any further. You can't really judge a draft before the players have played, but this pick is bad. Just doesn't make sense. Kirk Cousins is on, I believe he's on a 4-year deal now. He's already Michael Penix is already so old, and so it just doesn't really make sense for them to draft him. You know, when the value of all of the players that are there, you know, you got Latu, or sorry, his name is so hard, Bryce. Latu, who ended up going at 15, Byron Murphy, Olu Fashanu, and Roma Dunze, like Brock Bowers was still on the board. Like, gosh, like all of these great players, and they would decided to go and get a quarterback who, by the time that he finally gets a chance to play, potentially, he'll be around 28, 29 years old.
Yeah, it's wild. It's really wild. And rumors were coming out that were saying they were looking to trade back into the first round to get a guy like Latu or get a guy like Dallas Turner off the edge. And it's like, if that's your number one priority, why are you drafting a quarterback at pick 8? You could trade back from 8 with the team that really wants a quarterback, like the Raiders, who are calling to trade up with like teams like Tennessee. You could have traded back to 13. Let the Raiders come up, pick Penix at 8, stay at 13, and then have your guy in Latu or Turner fall to you at 13, plus that draft capital that you get, you know? It's just something that would have made a lot more sense. If you're in a win-now mode because you just signed a quarterback in his mid-30s who has proved himself to be a pretty good quarterback in the NFL, and you have him in a good weapon, a good source of weapons. You know, obviously you got Bijan last year. You got Kyle Pitts 3 years ago. You got Drake London 2 years ago. You've got all these fantastic weapons on offense, and then you go and sign a guy who can be a winner for you at QB. Obviously, he doesn't have the greatest primetime record, the greatest playoff record. Kirk Cousins doesn't. But you put him in a good situation, and then you just basically give him a big old slap in the face by drafting a quarterback who's 24. May I add too. So it's just a very questionable thing to happen in the first round. So, and then another thing that I want to speak on here is Bo Nix. Bo Nix at 12 to the Broncos. That was also a questionable thing to me, in my opinion. I mean, you look at Denver. Sean Payton was trying to say, he was trying to do this. That was his whole plan the whole time. I don't believe him at all. I think he's just trying to cope with the fact he didn't get McCarthy, which he absolutely has loved throughout the entire draft process. It came out like before he was even declared for the draft that he was in love with J.J. McCarthy's play and his play style. So that's something that really, honestly, just confused me. I mean, I get it. You needed a quarterback. Your starting quarterback was going to be Zach Wilson. You're very QB needy. I just think they panicked. I think they were worried that Knicks would go to their divisional rival in Las Vegas. But I don't think Vegas would have gone QB at 13 if it wasn't Penix. But I just didn't really understand the Bo Nix pick. I didn't really like it either. I graded it like a C-, a D+. I just didn't like it.
Yeah, Bo, I mean, like you said, the Sean Payton, coach of the Denver Broncos, was in love with J.J. McCarthy. Really, I mean, everybody was in love with J.J. McCarthy at one point. It felt like, you know, shot up draft boards. People thought he was going to go top 3. Sorry, just technical difficult. Oh, okay, we're good. Yeah, so, you know, everybody thought J.J. McCarthy was going to go, you know, potentially top 3, and, you know, ultimately ends up going 10. And so now Broncos were left in a situation where the only really quarterback left on the board was Bo Nix. And I think that ultimately the Broncos said, well, we're probably going to be pretty bad this year. What does next year's draft look like? And they looked at it and they said, ooh, Shedeur Sanders is the favorite to go number 1 overall. Yeah, we'll take Bo Nix. And I really do think that was probably the better decision than waiting it out and seeing, leaving it up to chance where they fell in next year's draft. And, they're giving themselves an opportunity to develop a quarterback. I mean, you look at, recent drafts. I mean, Patrick Mahomes went, I believe 8th or 9th overall. Lamar Jackson went back in the first round. A lot of these really great quarterbacks in the league didn't go until later in the first round, or relatively later in the first 10 picks. They kind of go later in the first 10 picks, like Josh Allen and all those guys. And so I think that they're taking a shot, and they're going to try and develop Bo Nix to be their superstar quarterback.
Yeah, I would say if it is any player or a coach for a player to go under his wing, I would pick Sean Payton. He's a great coach. However, he did not make Drew Brees. Drew Brees made Sean Payton. But he's a great coach. He's a great coach. As much as I don't like to admit it, because I am a Saints fan, and he left the Saints for Denver. Sean Payton does a great job. He led a team with Trevor Siemian as the starting quarterback to a 9-8 season. I mean, they also matched him up. They also brought back Troy Franklin in the 4th round. Paired him back up with his college teammate, who a lot of people thought would probably sneak into the end of the 1st round. So to see him fall to the 4th round was very interesting. But I mean, they got their guy regardless. So
yeah, no, I love that pick, getting Troy Franklin. They got some good offensive lineman pieces later in the draft as well. The Broncos had a really good draft. And I want to touch. I know that you mentioned the teams that won the first round, or not necessarily won the first round, but had a good first round. And I want to touch base on the Cardinals. Cardinals, a lot of people thought that they were going to potentially move down from 4, and maybe let a team trade up, and that's where a lot of people had JJ McCarthy potentially going, but they didn't do that. Stuck with their gun, drafted their guy Marvin Harrison, who. Out of if you don't have all these quarterback needy teams up at the top, Marvin Harrison Jr. probably goes number 1 in next year's draft, and maybe even drafts before. And then also, they traded up later in the 1st round and picked Darius Robinson, who I thought he was going to go a little bit earlier. And so to see him fall that late, I mean, just a great 1st round for the Cardinals, who are looking to rebuild, that defensive front. What do you kind of think on that, Bryce?
I looked at the Darius Robinson pick. I kind of liked it. At the same time, I thought interior would probably be a better choice. I thought they would go Johnny Newton at 27 from Illinois. He ended up dropping to the Washington Commanders in the 2nd round, but Darius Robinson's a very good player, and I think a lot of people, when they watched the combine and saw him run I think it was a 4.95 40 or something like that, a lot of people are like, wow, this guy's slow, but they don't realize this dude's 300 pounds. He's a big dude, and he's not really a speedster, but he's when you look at it, he's strong, and he gets through the offensive lineman. He's able to bully them with his strength, and he's really able. He has a lot of length, and that's something that I really like from defensive ends. If they have length in their arms, especially, they can reach out and grab a quarterback from a while away, and that's something that even can throw a quarterback off, is doing that. So I really do like the Darius Robinson pick, and that's honestly a really good winner of the 1st round that I, honestly should have pointed out with the Bears and the Steelers and the Lions and Eagles, but I didn't. But thank you for reminding me about that, because they had a great time. And then obviously, as you said, is Maserati Marv is a stud. He was the number one. He's the number one. He would be the number 1 pick in any draft class other than this year, because there's so many QB needing teams in this draft. But yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., Darius Robinson, good one. 5 winners. Our 5 winners were, Chicago, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Philly. 2 losers, Denver and Atlanta. Now, that's going to be it for the NFL draft portion. Cam, I appreciate you a ton for hopping on here talking NBA and NFL. It's been a pleasure having you on, man. And I mean, it's great to be able to talk sports with you. You know.
Of course, Bryce. Just like the old days, right?
Oh,
Always a pleasure to get on here and talk some ball with you. I mean, you're one of the best, and I mean, hopefully we can do this again.
of course, man. I'm hoping to do the same, but we're going to be turning on to our final segment today, and that is going to be the Champions League is going on right now. I've got my good friend and my soccer expert Thomas Birch here with me.
Hello, hello.
He's going to be talking Champions League with me. The semifinals just came to a close, and we've got a matchup between Dortmund and Real Madrid in the Champions League final. Birch, would you like to take it away and just kind of like give us a little rundown of what you saw in these two games for the semifinal in the final two games?
Yeah, Bryce. So to start it off, we had PSG and Dortmund, and in the first leg, we saw Dortmund upset PSG in Germany, and they actually beat them 1-0, and it was really interesting to see PSG's reaction to that. They came into it; they're the big money team. They throw around billions of pounds a year, it seems like, and they lost, and their big names didn't show up in that game. And then the same thing happened in the second leg in Paris. They actually lost 1-0 again, and ultimately, I think Kylian Mbappe, he needs to leave. He needs to get out of PSG. It's not for him. He doesn't look like he wants to be there, and he actually looks like he wants to be at the other team that is in the championship, Real Madrid, who just finished up against Bayern. And I mean, it's crazy like to look at on paper, but watching a Real Madrid game is something else. 89th minute, they're down 1-0. Everyone thinks Bayern Munich's about to take this. They went into it tied. They went into the game today tied. And Bayern Munich makes some questionable subs. They bring off Harry Kane, arguably the best striker in the world. They bring off their goal scorers, and they lose. Real Madrid does it again. They score 2 goals in added time late. There was a really questionable reffing call late that may have taken away an equalizer from Bayern, but I don't know. I think if you're Bayern Munich, you have to make better decisions there, and I think Real Madrid are just the team to beat this year. They don't give up. It's a different mentality. Yeah.
Yeah, coming from a guy who's not really that big of a soccer fan, I've been hearing about this stuff every once in a while, and just being able to hear that, Madrid came back and scored 2 goals within that extra time period, and it just wows me. And especially when you look at, I mean, I'm a stats guy, of course. I love the statistics of sports. Looking at it, the way that this game kind of went. I mean, only 8 total attempts. I'm assuming that is on goal. It just like having that. It just seems like you shouldn't be winning for 88 minutes out of the 90 minutes. But obviously, I'm assuming a lot of those attempts came from towards the end of the game. As I did not watch this one, I did see a lot of stuff about PSG and Dortmund because of Kylian Mbappe. He obviously is one of the best, arguably the best soccer player in the world. So you hear about him all the time, and that game was a very surprising thing to me as well. I mean, it just seemed like PSG was just dominating most aspects of the game. When it came to possession, passing, just all of that type of stuff in general. And the fact that Dortmund only had 6 total attempts and they were able to score 1 time out of those 6 attempts just really shocked me. And I'm excited to see how this goes. I honestly might tune into a soccer game for once, which is kind of funny to say. I think the last time I did that was maybe the United States versus England in the World Cup. But we've got a pretty interesting matchup now in the final. So, Birch, if you'd like to, just kind of like give me some tips and what you think's going to happen so I can...
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. I think Real Madrid, for kind of a change, they're actually going to dominate the game. When they're outside of Spain, they tend to sit back. They let other teams build pressure. They often go down a goal or 2, and they usually make a comeback. But I don't think that's how Dortmund play. I think I think Real Madrid's going to really put the pressure on Dortmund, and just, I don't know. I think, honestly, my prediction is 3-1 to Real Madrid. I think it's 2-0 at half. I don't think Dortmund have the firepower. They're a bit of a younger team, and their standout guy, Jadon Sancho, who's actually on loan, he's not even sure he's playing next year, I think he's got to step up. They got another young left back who's also on loan currently, Ian Matson, who also needs to step up big time. And then Dortmund has some older guys, Mats Hummels, who's such an experienced center back. But I think Real Madrid has that aura almost. You have Jude Bellingham, you have Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, who are just arguably the best attack in the world this year. And I don't think Dortmund stand a chance, honestly, unless they score some fluke goal and hold defensively.
I mean, coming from a very, very casual perspective, I've never honestly even heard of Dortmund. So obviously I've heard of Real Madrid for a pretty popular team. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. And I thank Birch for coming on and, just kind of giving his little expertise here. So, but that's going to be it for the soccer portion. That's going to be it for the rest of the podcast. So I appreciate everybody here for coming and tuning in. And I had to throw a little thing that I may not be good in, but the world loves. So appreciated it, everybody listening. If you enjoyed, I'd love for you guys to come back, listen again. And this has been Wood Talk Sports podcast, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.